Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever noticed how incredibly difficult it is to admit you're wrong?
Oh, definitely.
Like truly, deeply wrong about something you are utterly convinced of.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating how readily we update our phones, our fashion, even our coffee orders.
Yeah, the small stuff.
But updating our knowledge and opinions, that often feels like pulling teeth, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And the material we're exploring today zeroes in on this. It suggests this isn't just simple stubbornness. Psychologists have a term for this resistance: cognitive laziness.
Cognitive laziness.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's basically easier for our brains to cling to existing views than to do the heavy mental lifting required to grapple with new conflicting information. They call it seizing and freezing.
Teasing and freezing. Huh.
We let our beliefs become brittle rather than staying flexible.
Brittle beliefs. That
Yeah.
sounds, well, dangerous. And the stakes can be incredibly high, right? There's this striking, tragic example in the sources about the Man Gulch wildfire.
Yeah.
Firefighters, trained extensively, tried to outrun a flashover fire uphill, sticking to their learned procedure. Even when dropping their heavy equipment, their lifeline could have saved them. Most couldn't override their training fast enough. 12 firefighters died.
A heart-wrenching case study. It starkly illustrates how, especially under acute stress, our default is to revert to automatic, well-learned responses.
Right, instincts kick in.
Exactly. And these instincts are fantastic in stable, predictable environments. But when the environment shifts rapidly, failing to rethink can be fatal.
And the one firefighter who survives.
Wagner Dodge, yeah. He survived precisely because he did swiftly override his learned responses. He started an escape fire, to burn a safe zone for himself. He rethought faster than he ran.
Wow, rethinking quite literally saved his life.
It did.
And this principle, this resistance to updating our mental software, it isn't confined to wildfires, is it? The material you shared makes it clear it blocks our growth everywhere in work, in our relationships.
Even in society as a whole.
Yeah, think about how deeply entrenched views, ideologies the sources describe as calcified, can create these seemingly insurmountable divides.
Right.
Neutral examples are cited, like views on kneeling during the anthem, or how a simple voting booth choice can strain or even end a friendship or marriage. It's not about the issues themselves, necessarily.
No, it's the rigidity, the behavior of those views, like walls, making rethinking feel impossible.
Right. Our opinions can become so intertwined with our identity that challenging them feels like a personal attack.
Mm-hmm. Our amygdala, the brain's threat detector, can trigger a fight-or-flight response. And the research shows we become incredibly skilled at spotting weaknesses in others' arguments.
Oh yeah, we're great at that.
While remaining remarkably blind to our own.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive then, guided by the material you've shared, is to figure out how you, listening, can break free from that seizing and freezing.
Exactly. How to relearn, how to learn in a world that demands adaptability.
So we're going to extract some key insights and practical ideas straight from these pages for cultivating the habit of rethinking. Consider us your guides to becoming, as one source puts it, a curious coach for your own mind.
I like that.
Let's make updating your beliefs something to celebrate.
A fantastic mission. And to start, let's jump into a core idea presented in the sources. Embracing what's called the scientist mindset.
Okay.
And, perhaps surprisingly, discovering the joy of being wrong.
The joy of being wrong. That sounds completely counterintuitive. Most of us are hardwired to favor feeling right over being right, aren't we?
We absolutely are. It feels comfortable, safe even. But the scientist mindset resists letting ideas harden into rigid ideologies.
Okay.
Scientists ideally don't lead with answers. They lead with questions and puzzles. They teach from evidence, and they cultivate skepticism not just about others' arguments, but they dare to disagree with their own.
So it's about humility.
It's a mindset built on humility, doubt, and especially curiosity.
And the opposite, as the material points out, are these preacher, prosecutor, or politician modes.
Yeah, those actively hinder rethinking. The preacher delivers their truth, the prosecutor finds fault in others' views, the politician seeks approval. None of them are primarily driven by changing their own minds based on new evidence.
Right. They're about defending or persuading.
Exactly. And one of the most compelling examples from the sources illustrating the power of this mindset comes from an experiment with Italian startup founders.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Okay, so one group got standard business training. The other was taught to adopt a scientific approach, view their strategy as a theory, prototypes as experiments, and data as evidence to test their hypotheses.
Like a lab for their business idea.
Pretty much. And what happened?
I'm guessing the scientists did better.
The difference was staggering. Over the following year, the control group averaged less than $300 in revenue.
Wow, okay.
The scientific thinking group, over $12,000.
Get out. That's huge.
It is. They pivoted their strategy more than twice as often because they weren't attached to their initial idea, they were attached to the evidence. While sticking to their original plans felt safer for the control group, the scientists adapted and thrived.
That's incredible. It makes me think of Mike Lazaridis and BlackBerry. That story is also in the sources.
Right, the rise and fall.
Lazaridis clearly had a scientist mindset as an engineer, hypothesizing and testing relentlessly to build that groundbreaking device.
Absolutely, brilliant engineer.
But then, when the iPhone arrived, he failed to apply that same rethinking as a CEO. He apparently saw it and said, they've put a Mac in this thing.
Yeah.
Recognized its disruptive potential.
Yeah, the company failed to adapt its core strategy. It was a failure of rethinking at the top that led to their decline.
A powerful lesson that past success is no guarantee against future failure if you don't keep questioning assumptions.
Absolutely. And that idea of the joy of being wrong. The material shares a surprising detail. Admitting you were wrong can actually increase your credibility.
Really? My gut tells me admitting a mistake makes you look incompetent, like you messed up.
Not always, especially in, say, a scientific context or any field that values learning. The story of astronomer Andrew Lyne is a perfect example.
What happened with him?
He announced a major discovery, a planet orbiting a pulsar. Huge news. But then, reviewing his data, he realized he'd made a calculation error. The planet didn't exist.
Oh no, that must have been mortifying.
Just imagine. But at a major conference, he walked onto the stage in front of hundreds of colleagues and revealed his mistake.
What was the reaction? Silence? Scorn?
A standing ovation.
No way.
Yes. An astrophysicist there called it the most honorable thing I've ever seen. It wasn't seen as incompetence. It was a display of honesty, integrity, and a deep commitment to the truth and the scientific process. It actually made him seem more respectable.
That is fascinating. So the nugget for you listening here, contrary to that initial gut feeling, admitting you were wrong, particularly when backed by evidence and integrity, can build credibility and trust.
It opens doors for future learning.
So start viewing your own ideas, whether about a work project, a relationship dynamic, or even a long-held opinion as hypotheses to be tested.
Ask yourself, genuinely, what evidence would change your mind?
See, being wrong not as a personal failure, but an exciting opportunity for development and a more accurate understanding. That's the joy part.
Exactly. Building on that mindset, the sources also delve into the importance of finding the right balance in how you view your own capabilities. They call it the sweet spot of confidence, achieving confident humility.
Confident humility. Okay, another seemingly paradoxical term, like joy of being wrong.
It absolutely is. We often swing between extremes. One is exemplified by armchair quarterback syndrome.
I know a few of those.
And the I'm not biased bias, where people, especially intelligent ones, are overconfident, overestimating their competence relative to their confidence.
Right, they think they know more than they do.
They climb Mount Stupid on the Dunning-Kruger curve, knowing just enough to feel secure, but not enough to see their limitations. The material points out that economists found overconfidence to be most rampant in companies with the poorest management, those least likely to recognize their own flaws.
Okay, so overconfidence blinds you. What's the other end of the spectrum?
That's imposter syndrome, where your competence exceeds your confidence. People genuinely underestimate their abilities, feeling like frauds despite clear evidence of success.
I've heard a lot about that.
Hala Tómasdóttir, who felt unqualified running for president of Iceland despite significant support, is cited as an example. They are often blind to their own strengths.
Got it. So confident humility is the sweet spot in the middle.
Precisely. It's having faith in your capability to achieve a goal, combined with the humility to question whether you have the right tools or are even addressing the right problem.
Okay.
It provides just enough doubt to re-examine your existing knowledge and assumptions, but enough confidence to actively pursue new insights and solutions.
And the sources suggest that even feeling like an imposter, when it's not debilitating, might have surprising benefits. That feels counterintuitive too.
Yeah, they argue for the benefits of doubt. That discomfort can actually motivate you to work harder and smarter. It can keep you in a beginner's mindset, constantly questioning assumptions.
So it keeps you learning.
And crucially, it fosters the humility necessary to seek insights from others. As the material states, Learning requires the humility to realize one has something to learn.
That resonates deeply. And there's a powerful example of confident humility in action with Michelle Hansen, mentioned in the sources, applying for a product manager job.
Oh, right. The one she wasn't technically qualified for.
Exactly. She was incredibly excited about the role, but lacked the required finance background and years of experience.
So what did she do? Try to fake it?
No. Instead of trying to bluff or hide her weaknesses, she acknowledged them directly and legitimately in her cover letter.
Bold move.
And in interviews, she didn't pretend to have the experience, but instead asked insightful questions, like what experiments they had run that had surprised them. She demonstrated not that she had all the answers, but that she knew how to learn and how to identify unknowns.
So she showed her learning process, her curiosity.
Exactly.
Yep.
And she got the job and thrived. That's a fantastic illustration. Overconfidence blinds you to your weaknesses. Humility helps you see them. Confident humility gives you the tools and drive to overcome them.
It's a crucial balance for continuous learning and growth. So we've talked about the scientist mindset and confident humility, but, rethinking is still incredibly difficult because our convictions often trap us.
In prisons of our own making. I like that phrase from the source.
Yeah, it's evocative, isn't it? Our opinions become deeply intertwined with our identity, making any challenge feel like a personal threat, triggering that primitive fight-or-flight response we mentioned.
We're great at spotting the speck in someone else's eye, but miss the log in our own, as the saying goes.
Totally. Which is where the material shifts to practical strategies for building rethinking routines and actively challenging assumptions.
Okay, let's get practical. What are these routines?
Exactly. A key strategy is detaching your sense of self from your opinions.
Easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. But the idea is to base your identity instead on core values, things like excellence, generosity, freedom, integrity.
Because values are more stable and foundational than specific opinions or beliefs.
Right.
But they're also flexible enough to allow you to change your mind on how best to live them out based on new evidence.
Precisely. When your identity is anchored in values rather than specific opinions or past predictions, you have the psychological flexibility to update your practices and beliefs without feeling like your whole self is crumbling.
That makes sense. The sources mention how some experts got tripped up on big political shifts, like Trump or Brexit.
Yes, partly because they were perhaps too emotionally invested in their identities as experts and their track record of past predictions that turned out wrong. It's hard to just wake up in the morning, snap your fingers, and decide you don't care about views tied so tightly to your sense of self.
Detaching identity from opinion seems like a powerful first step. What about building routines to actively challenge yourself?
One crucial routine is building challenge networks.
Challenge networks, what are those?
These are people you trust to point out your blind spots, question your reasoning, and push you to rethink. They might even be somewhat disagreeable in the sense that they are fearless about questioning norms.
Okay, not just yes men.
Definitely not. But you value their perspective because they hold you accountable for thinking again. They care enough to challenge you.
Like Brad Bird at Pixar, actively seeking out misfits and pirates for the Incredibles team. Is that the idea?
That's the exact example used. He deliberately looked for people who were a bit disgruntled or dissatisfied with the status quo because he knew they would challenge established processes.
And it worked.
Apparently, this resistance actually helped them innovate and lower production costs. The sources highlight the good fights. Brad Bird and his producer John Walker had task conflict focused on ideas and details of the movie.
Task